Happy New Year to you all. I knew that the best way to start this new year was to share something very personal. I recently had the opportunity to share a little snapshot of my life so far and the trials I've gone through and who has gotten me through them all. So I thought I'd share it with you all. Now I'm going to warn you, there's a lot of crying, like a little, maybe too much ridiculous crying for me, because if any of you know me, I'm not the type of person to cry in public, but it couldn't be helped this time. I share, I guess, lessons I've learned in life. Anyways, I just thought it'd be a good thing to share with all of you. You will definitely get to know who I am even better through this audio. And, oh goodness, my cat's pushing the phone. And you'll understand better why I am the way I am, the person who I am, because of these things. And I just hope more than anything that this touches your heart. That, you know, it doesn't matter. Even if it doesn't, that's okay. You can move on in life. You've listened to it, whatever. But if it does make an impact, then I'm blessed to be part of that journey for you. Anyways, I'm just going to leave it at that. And yeah, this is a little bit of my story. The way God has worked in my life, like a phrase or a statement, and He led me to that God is a faithful provider that loves to give good gifts to His children, because that's been my life story. I don't know, I'm crying. That song because it's like my life song that it always brings me to tears. I can hardly ever get through singing it without crying, so sorry. It's probably the first time a lot of you have seen me cry, so there you go. Okay.
Remember
I know, finally.
Remember when we were wondering whether we should sing the song before or after?
I know, maybe I made a mistake. But the last one, too, kind of does the same thing. Maybe just not as powerful as this one. But anyways. So, yeah, that's how I'm hoping that you see God today. But, I mean, He's so many wonderful things. But for my life, that's been that. And actually this morning I was vacuuming and I was listening to podcast, but the thought came in my head that God was all that even before I was born. So a little background story about my parents. I won't go too much detail, but my mom had a really difficult childhood and just was going from home to home and suffered a lot of trauma, right? And then my dad, although probably didn't suffer the same trauma, but he grew up with a single mom, and it was just a difficult life overall. But he supposedly came to know the Lord when he was around 12, but didn't quite live and walk in his faith. And he came to Montreal, and he met my mom. And my mom had come to Montreal to be with my dad, and to get out of that whole system that she was in. And they met. And she wasn't a believer at the time, and they met, and then my dad one day said, "Well, what do you think of going to church?" It was kind of out of the blue, and she said, "Sure." A family or two that she had stayed with in her childhood, they had taken her to church, so she had gone to Sunday school, and I guess she had heard the gospel in some shape or form, right? And so she said, sure. And 3 months, she heard a testimony, and she got saved through that testimony because that person's life was similar to hers. And then they had me. Then she was pregnant with me, and then they thought, well, probably the right thing to do is to get married. And I was just thinking, even though God provided for them in that way, that, my mom was saved, and who knows what my dad's life would have been like, if he hadn't met her, and, if they had never met, then I might have, my brothers and I know it's going down the road, but who knows, I may have been born into a similar space or childhood like she had, because that's what she knew and that's what she grew up with. And not saying it would have been perpetuated, but you never know, right? So even in that, I was thinking, like, God provided for me with a good childhood home, and they loved each other, and they still love each other. And and I just grew up in a great childhood home. I had a great childhood. Like, there's nothing that I could say about my childhood that I could actually complain about, because they were there for me, they loved me, they spent time with me, and my brothers too. And the first time I heard the gospel, I'm sure they talked about it as I was growing up. I guess, like, the first time that I heard it and accepted it, we went to Jerry Park, which is like this park 10 minutes bike ride from us, and we would go there often as kids and as a family. And I think it was just my mom and I remember it was near a pole. That's all I remember, or a water fountain. And she was just sharing what the gospel is, that Jesus died for my sin, and to accept his gift would be to be with him forever. And then she did tell me about hell, and I think I had the distinct memory of, like, well, I don't want to go to hell. And I want to be with my family, and I want to be with God because he's love, right? So I remember I prayed right there in the park, and my mom kind of led me through prayer, or just kind of gave me indications of what to pray for, and then I just prayed. That was when I was 5. And I don't remember much. I'm sure the Lord was working in my heart from then, but I went through a couple of years, probably, I think from 8 to 10, where I know it was my pride. My pride was being tested. And if ever I didn't meet their expectations, or if I didn't meet my expectations, I would get very, very depressed very quickly, like an acute depression. And it went on for a while like that, but to the point that I did contemplate many times taking my own life. And there was no ever any reason for that, because, as I said, I had a good childhood. My parents took care of me, but there was just this, I would go down into the depths of, well, if I can't do this, and if I can't be perfect, then why am I living? I'm worthless, I'm garbage. Just these things. And no one ever knew. It would come on very quickly. And I probably had these thoughts a lot in my room alone. And as I said, there was no reason. I don't know what it was exactly, but just the need to be something that I wasn't, right? I was focusing on myself and how I didn't do things that needed to be done, right? And I knew, at the time I didn't know it was my pride, but I was focused on me. And one night I was thinking through how I was going to go through it, and I remember that was a very visual presentation that I was seeing myself in, but I was seeing myself in a very dark pit that I couldn't get out of. And I was stuck there, and I couldn't get myself out of it. And I just felt stuck. I don't even know how long this was going on, but just warring in my head about, well, if I'm stuck here, then what's the point? And I guess maybe around that time, all of a sudden in my head, I saw above me the cross, and it was like lit up in this, heavenly light, you could say. And again, obviously it's not there. I'm seeing it all in my mind. I don't know how this is happening, and I looked up at the cross, and I thought, if God loves me and sees me as his child, then why am I believing these things about myself? And that's when I realized, wow, it's my pride. Like, I'm just focusing on myself. I'm not focusing on him. I'm not focusing on who I am in him as a child of God. It's just me, right? And that's what you tend to do when you're depressed a lot, is you're just focusing on yourself. And so I realized that the only way I could get out was, I knew I was saved. I didn't doubt that, but I knew the only way I could get out was to completely take the focus off of me. And not what I could do in my own strength, but what he could do through me, even though I felt worthless or all that stuff. And I realized, too, at that point, that those were lies I was telling myself or feeling or whatever. So, and then after that, it was miraculous. I've never gone through that again. I've had slight, downs or, down with something, but I've never been depressed to the point like, wow, I'm worthless or like I've never believed that, because I knew deep down those were lies. And from that, I guess a lot of my life I live by, well, what is the truth? It doesn't matter how I feel or, what people say things are truth. What is the truth? What is God's truth? And so from that point, those are truths that I've never really doubted from that point. I guess it was just so strong. So, and then I was done with that. And I think it was soon after that I wanted to get baptized. Now, I grew up in a Brethren church. And I told the elders, I said, well, I'd really like to get baptized. And I got some confrontation on that, saying, well, you're too young. You could walk away from the faith in your teens. Like, we don't think this is a very good time to do it. And I said, well, no, I know what I believe, and I want to do this now. And so we met.
How old were you?
I was 10.
Awesome.
Yeah. And
Were you 10 when you were baptized?
yeah, I was 10. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I just knew it had to be done. Like, I've been saved for 5 years, and I'm old enough to know what I want at this point. So, yes.
Why did you want to be baptized?
Because the baptism was to show a greater truth that had happened inside me, because God made me a new person. And so baptism was showing that to everyone around me, that God had changed my heart. And so, yeah, there was some pushback, but finally we had the meetings, and I was able to get baptized. But before I got baptized, I went to camp, and I don't even know what the message was about, but all of a sudden I'm like, what if I'm not saved? I don't know, I just started doubting myself, like, what if I'm not really saved? So there was the campfire, we're all outside, we're listening to the message, they're praying, and while he was praying, the speaker, I prayed in my heart. I said, I just not got saved again, but I renewed my faith, my stance in who I knew I believed in. And I was like, because I better be sure I'm getting baptized. Like, this is serious. I can't just, do it willy-nilly. Like, this is serious. So, and then I got baptized. And I have to say, God was so good to me, like, in my teen years. I kind of view them as my golden years, actually. It was just a time that I really fell in love with God through, there's just so many different ways. But he provided in my life a wonderful family, great Christian education through Abeka Academy, which, I never, we're talking with my teachers, but I learned so much from them, from my Sunday school teacher, which is Joel Robichaud, and just so many other teachers, and even my parents. Like, I would spend time with my dad, and he and I would go through the Bible together and study together, and my mom too, and just different ways. And so during those years, he really formed me to fall in love with him, and those are just, I really have nothing to say about those years other than good things, which I know is difficult for a lot of teenagers. But that's, I guess after baptism, after having been saved from that dark pit, just keeping this song in mind, Be Thou My Vision, that God was the one thing I was going for, right, in my life. So, that, and kind of along the way, I had this desire in my heart from a very young age, probably 12, that I wanted to get married young and have kids, and a lot of kids, but I didn't see that really happening because that just doesn't really happen today, right? And I remember just having to, when you want something so badly, you hold on to it, but it can become an idol in your life. And so I remember at that time when I let go of that and I said, whatever your will, Lord, that you want, whether you want me to have that or I go off and do something else, whatever it be, then that's your will. And so right around that time, that's when I met James, or a little bit after that. And just things progressed there, right? And so he provided me with James and the kids, and it happened. I just didn't think it would happen, but it did. In the timing that deep desire I had, he gave me, right? But so that's kind of like one chunk of my life. I'd say the second chunk of my life is, after we got married, and then I had Felicity, and then I had Edward, and it was a difficult time. Well, I should say this, it was the loss of identity years for me, because, a lot of changes happened, right? And then we had a lot of people stay with us for a year and a month, his family. And I have to thank God, and again, God provided for us in this, that no matter the drama or stuff that was happening with his family, that never affected our marriage. It started to, but I think God gave me the wisdom to see it before it could happen, and then we talked about it, and then, we were always on the same page. And so I have to just thank God for providing me with someone who put me first, before family, so we could build our family. And but after that, I didn't know who I was. After getting married, kids, and then people invading your home and your mind, and for like a year and a half, I didn't even know how to answer people who said, "How are you doing?" Because I just didn't know how I was doing. It was just, I don't know, the brain was so busy, and it was just, I don't know, it was just so much. Like, it was almost like a deer in headlights. Like, I don't know what I don't know how I'm feeling, right? Yeah. Yeah. And then I was also dealing with, I wanted kids, but it's just a very different lifestyle from what I had before, because before I had kids in my golden teen years, I was out working with school, and I had the opportunity to tell people about Christ, and that was stuff I loved to do. And then all of a sudden, also the first year I was home, we only had one car, so I felt stuck and trapped at the house. I couldn't go anywhere, and no one visited me, other than my mom, but my friends were going on different paths of their lives, and it was just all very different. So a lot of changes, and I just didn't know how to handle that. But even in those years, God was patiently showing me through a lot of little mundane, everyday things that you go through, and just teaching me that time of my life wasn't for people outside the home, but it was for my kids, right? And just loving them and giving them a beautiful home, just having to shift my identity in that way. But still, the identity of, this is the place God's given me, and it's a good gift. I mean, they're gifts because it's exactly what I wanted, God gave that to me. God granted me the desires of my heart. But sometimes even when you want something, you don't understand what you're asking for, right? But God was good, because he still taught me through those years, just changes. And all, I'd say, those years, and in those years, it was James, started his business, and his business away from the farm. So there was a lot of shift too in livelihood and what we were gonna do, right? And one example of God just being a provider and giving good gifts, a faithful provider, is one time we only had $24 in the bank account, and I was like, I don't have money to get diapers. And I remember driving, and I was like, okay, what do I do? I'm stuck. And I just knew that if I worried about it, it was not going to do anything, right? I was like, okay, well, what do I do then? How do I not worry about this? Okay, I'm not going to worry. And I just, all throughout my life, throughout these difficult times such as this, I'd say, okay, God, I'm waiting for you to move. You're going to move. You're going to answer. You're going to provide in some way. And he did. It was like the exact amount we needed for paying off a certain bill and then having money for groceries or diapers or whatever. So there's been a few instances of that. And so those years there were a lot of those types of things where God just gave exactly what I needed when I needed it. Or the family, I should say. Oh, he's so sweet. For someone who likes to be so tough, I'm probably like the one who cries the most. Anyways, yeah. So those were those years. And then I think that was all in preparation for when COVID hit. Because when COVID hit, I thought I'd be the type of person to be going crazy, stuck in a house, like not going anywhere. I love to go out. I love to be with people. I love to play with my kids and just be with friends. And then everything shut down, and I realized I was really taken aback about how God had provided me with a sense of contentment and peace that I never would have had on my own strength. And I think all those years of not knowing who I really was and figuring things out and him providing for me in those ways prepared me for that. So when that came around, it was kind of a breeze a little bit, and especially with homeschooling, the kids, I didn't have to change anything, and it was just so peaceful, and I didn't think it would be like that. If I hadn't had those years of preparation, I would have been climbing up the walls to get out. Like, that's just the type of person I would be. But God gave me that peace, and it helps that, we had regular visitors of my parents come every week that kept us sane, and I know the kids really enjoy that too. Actually, that was a huge, God provided for us that way with my kids, for them to have someone that, other than mom and dad, to love them and to be with them and spend time with them. So God provided in that way too. And trying to see if so that was the last 5 years, and actually also something that helped with that too is I remember before COVID and before the shift into this time period in my life, I felt like every day was a chore. Like, just, you get up at the same time, you do what you need to do, and it's like repeat all over again. There was no joy in my life during those identity loss years, but God provided me with a book that I came across, and it was a personal development book written by a Christian but not for a Christian audience, just for a secular audience. And I remember just gobbling it all up and it really speaking to me and just kind of reinvigorating the why behind life. And then that made me turn to scripture more, and so from that was probably about 6-7 years ago. And that also really helped me have a better mindset about COVID and, the world shutting down, everything that came up after that. So, and now we're in we're looking to move, and there's a lot of unknowns, right? A lot of unknowns that come up in life, but we'll see in the song that comes after Come Thou Fount, and we just mentioned it at the table, Ebenezer, right? Which is raising up markers where divinity has touched your life. And I guess all these markers, every time something comes up, like now, we don't know exactly what's happening, where we're going to go, how things are going to work out exactly. But I've raised up these Ebenezers in my life to look back and say, this is what God did, and he's going to faithfully do it again, maybe in a different way. But I mean, that's the fun and surprise of life, and I love surprises. God surprises me all the time, but with good gifts. So hope I didn't miss anything critical, because we don't want to do that disservice to God. But yeah, just overall, God is a faithful provider, and he loves his children. So actually, my favorite verse, my life verse, is Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. And it goes into 29 as well. But that's been my life so far. There is one more thing that I would love to share. I think I've shared it with a few of you, but 2-3 years ago, I was in this, I don't know what exactly it was. I mean, I have a feeling, a notion that it was maybe some spirit that was, what do you call it? Oppressing me. Yeah, that's right. And it lasted for 4 months. And it started with me not feeling, it was close to what I felt with as a young kid, not feeling enough, feeling worthless, feeling like garbage. And it started spiraling down like that, where I just didn't feel like enough for my family. And then it spiraled to, for a few months, right? And then it spiraled to, I didn't feel like I was enough for James. And then I didn't feel like I was enough for the kids. And then just didn't feel like enough, right? And then January, I was just sitting in that, like a cesspool that you're sitting in. Not as bad as I said when I was younger, but then I took Felicity and a couple of the other youth to youth camp, right? And you're like, oh, I was leading youth at the time. So, you bring them to camp and you're like, oh, well, it's for them, right? Well, no. God used that particular weekend for me too. And there was a speaker Saturday night, and he was talking about God calling us to be the light of the world. And it was an interesting notion of, well, is there something that's keeping you back or holding you back from being the light of the world? And that really hit me, that question. I was just letting it simmer in my mind. And then after the service, they would invite the youth to go up, and he said, if there is something, write it down on a sticky note, stick it on the wall, just kind of like letting go of that thing. And I think while I was listening to that, I was like, okay, I know what I need to let go of. So I said, I was like, I'm going to go up if my youth goes up, right? And one of them did. I was like, okay, I'm going up. I'm like, I know what I'm going to do. And I wrote that down. And I wrote down, I'm giving up having to be enough for anybody else other than God, or something like that. Because I knew that maybe I wasn't enough for other people, but I'm enough for God because he created me and I'm his child. Yeah, so I wrote that down on the sticky note, and literally as soon as that note touched the wall, it was gone. Like that whole, I don't know what it was, but that whole oppression, that feeling, that it was just gone. And I felt so free after that to just be like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, it's you and me, God. And I know everything else falls into place from there. And I'm going to do my best, but I know that I'm enough for you. So that was probably my last bout into not feeling enough. But even there, God used a youth weekend to bring me to remind me, right? So, yeah, just my encouragement to you all is there's a lot of things we feel, or a lot of things that maybe we come to believe about ourselves or about other people that are not true. So hold it up to the truth of God's word. And what does God really say about you and, the people around you? And at the end of the day, that's what we need to follow. So, and that's why I love Be Thou My Vision, because it's just, it's all about him. Another verse I love is keeping your eyes on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, right? And there's so many distractions and voices, but that all just falls away in the light of His beauty. So.
I just want to say that for me, always were light, bright light. I remember we were doing Awana, and I was one of the leaders, and you were at Awana with Leah, and every child had to memorize scripture. And there will be, say John 3:6, then they will, so when Leah comes, the whole chapter, you just don't stop because she'll just continue the Bible. She has incredible memory. And I remember saying, Eva, did you hear Leah? Did you teach Leah? I said, she just has incredible memory. She said, yeah, she's incredible. But that's it. And I always remember as a very beautiful, radiant child when we went with the Robichaux to canoe camping and all that, to camping, not canoe camping.
Yeah.
So
we did canoe.
It's amazing how many struggles did you have, but in the outward, I always thought you were one of the most sweetest and wonderful and radiant. I just wanted to know that forever and for me.
Thank you.
We always thought you're example of a Christian girl. And the memory I was envious about.
Yes,
She
and
has incredible memory.
you and all the boys in Awana would be like, I'm gonna say 10 verses, and I'm like, sure, try. I beat you one more. No, I did learn. Okay, so twofold. I learned Awana verses because I did love learning the verses, but I also wanted to beat all the boys. and I wanted all the trophies, which I got.
I've got them.
Yes, probably was part of it.
Okay, I'm not going to mention about you reminding you to tell the story to the children tonight, or make you do it in front of everyone else. I'm curious, and perhaps you and Jay. Now, I was at a Stonehaven play. I was helping out with the lighting and the video, and I totally screwed up because I should have turned off the lights and I didn't, and I was distracted by you and James because you were both in there. It was called The Hiding Place.
Yeah.
You were both in that, right?
Yeah.
And I remember thinking at the time, they would make a really good couple, and they got distracted. Now, I'm interested to know, in my curiosity, were you actually going out during that time, or was it afterwards or before?
I think it was in the middle. Because,
It was in the middle.
Yeah, because we probably started,
We were both involved.
we started, I don't know, I'm guessing we started like March at least, maybe, or February. Anyways, we started early in the year, and then we started going out in May.
It's
May
the
7th.
power of drama.
May 9th.
No, I kind of thought it.
No, it was May 9th.
So it had nothing to do with the play then?
No,
Right,
we were...
okay.
Well, I mean, we were really good friends, so it gave us opportunities to hang out and talk more.
I remember we were going, the first exit after Ontario, there is this beach there.
Yeah.
Schlottenberg Park. Here?
Basin River.
No, I'm 40.
Oh, Voyageur.
Boy,
Oh, yeah.
And we will go, and remember we would play volleyball with Jackson. Jumping, and his head sticks out of the you were very athletic. You still are. But I remember that you and James will always, there was the beach, and in the end, you and James will sit down and talk for hours.
Oh, yes,
Remember
it was the
that?
church picnic.
Just
That's
all
what it
the
was.
time, and talk and talk and talk. Nothing was official though.
Oh,
We all knew that.
really? Okay.
That's how it works.
Before, okay.
It's called being intuitive, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I just see the beach is like this, and you were sitting on the rocks in the end.
And you were talking about COVID. I mean, it's been a real blessing that we've been able to meet together during COVID.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
and able to meet despite what governments might say. So I think that's been a real blessing to us.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can see, even talking to some of you and hearing about your lives, I can see how God kind of prepared all of us to, well, He did. He came to come to this moment and create this beautiful fellowship and community, right? And that was just my side of the preparation, but I know He prepped all of you for that, so, and I'm just grateful for it. So.
Is it the cave of the Dullam or whatever it is?
Amen.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else have any other questions or comments? Thank you, Leah. It's such a blessing.
Well, why don't we close